everyone. Welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have someone on my screen today recording with me, and I love this podcast, Next Level University. Just listened to the most recent episode just before coming on here, and it is one of the best podcasts that you're ever going to fall in love with. Kevin Palmieri was on the show, and we talked about pickles on the show when Kevin was on, which was great. Now his cohort, the one that makes him look the best, Alan, is also on the podcast. I'm excited to have Alan here. We're going to talk about podcasting. We're going to talk about Next Level University. What is it? Why do you need to care? Because you need to. And Alan's going to share his podcast journey and encourage you as a podcaster in the process. Alan, welcome as my guest co-host here on the show to the How to Podcast series.
Thank you for having me. David, I appreciate what you're doing. I respect what you're doing. I think it takes a lot of courage to come onto a podcast in general. We actually, for the very first time, have a group of podcasters with 11 individuals in it. We've been doing this group coaching program for coming up on 4 years. This is our 16th group. And Kevin and I, about 5 people into filling the 16th group, we sat down and said, they're all podcasters so far. I said, what if we had a group of only podcasters? Mm-hmm. And it's grow yourself, grow your podcast, grow your business is sort of the new direction we're going with the group coaching program. But my point is after doing 15 groups with individuals who were not podcasters and now doing a group with podcasters, we do these introductions on the very first session so everyone gets to know each other. It's sort of this round table thing. And it was very noticeably different. The level of speaking capability, the level of courage, there's something about being a podcaster, putting yourself out there, putting your voice out there that brings you to another level of humility, courage, and vulnerability, because ultimately you're putting yourself out there and your aunts and uncles and your grandparents and your mom and dad, stepdad, caregivers, friends. I mean, you are putting yourself out there to be judged and potentially criticized. And I have more respect and admiration for that than I ever have before, honestly, because it really takes a lot of courage. So kudos to anyone out there who is a podcaster.
Amazing. I feel like I'm sitting in Kevin's seat right now. Like he's going to come in any moment and go, hey, get on my seat. I'm supposed to be here with Alan. So I love what the two of you do together on the show. Can you kind of give us a little history lesson on Next Level University? Because I think I listened to episode 1857, which is a year. That's not just an episode number. That's a year. But can you tell me like more about how the show even started?
1850. I believe it was back in 1857.
Yeah.
When France and Napoleon. No, I'm kidding. All right. So I think he was passed away by then, actually. Yeah. So we crossed the 1857. The episode that you listened to, we actually recorded yesterday.
Okay.
So we do an episode a day. I'll give you sort of the high level tagline, and then I'll give you the history. Next Level University, level up your life, love, health, and wealth. Holistic self-improvement in your pocket from anywhere on the planet, completely free. Mm-hmm. And Kevin and I grew up without fathers, and he didn't meet his father till he was 27. My father passed away in a car accident when I was 2, and I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14, and my stepdad left at 14. And so we kind of are trying to be the male role models we never had. And we thought men would listen. It's mostly women, actually, who listen. I think it's becoming more men as we become less cowardly. But ultimately, the purpose of the show is helping you reach your potential. No matter how hard your past has been, you have a bigger, better, brighter future if you take responsibility for your own life. Okay. And if you improve yourself, you can improve your life. And that's really the idea under it. So it's very holistic, though. As for where it started, Kevin and I went to middle school together. We grew up in the same small town in Massachusetts.
Wow.
We were friends in middle school. And he didn't like me in high school because he thought I was an arrogant academic. And I think there's some truth to that. I don't know if you see all my awards on
yes,
the wall.
I can see them there, yes.
And he says, you were a little arrogant and I was a little insecure. And I think, we didn't mesh. And then in our mid-20s, we both matured a lot and had what we call our quarter-life crises. I got in a tough car accident, and that physically I was okay, no permanent physical damage, but it was not a fender bender. It was very, rattling, especially because my dad died in a car.
Yeah, right.
And then Kevin had suicidal ideation, and he was struggling tremendously because we had both achieved 6-figure incomes, and we were both achieved a lot of our quote unquote dreams. We both dated, gorgeous women and all this stuff. And we realized that we were sort of running from our past in some ways, and still overcoming the sort of abandonment, not having a dad stuff. And so he was raised by his mom and his Mima. I was raised by my mom and my older sister. And so we just resonate with each other. So I started a podcast called Conversations Change Lives. To this day, he says, Alan, it was a YouTube channel. You didn't have a podcast. It was going to be a podcast, sir. So how dare you?
How dare
Conversations Change Lives was the name of the podcast. And he was my first guest. And he had a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. Change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And I was his first guest. And he kept having me on. And eventually we just started to sort of do podcasts every week together, and we had the worst named podcast in the history of all podcasts, which was the Conversations Change Lives podcast meets Hyperconscious Podcast. We did that for about 20 episodes, and then eventually we went all in on the Hyperconscious Podcast. Change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. And hyperconscious, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means to be acutely aware. So it was an awareness show, mindset and awareness. And then eventually, I don't know, 500 or 400, however many episodes in, hundreds of episodes later, hundreds of guests later, we rebranded to what's now known as Next Level University. Level up your health, life, and love. And so that's sort of the story. And here we are. It's wild because my car accident was almost 10 years ago. I'm about to be 36 in November. I used to be able to joke and say I still look 15, but now I've got this beard going, so I can't joke about that anymore. But I'm about to be 36 in November, and I got in that car accident at 26. And so I told you I've been mentoring for 10 years. The first 3 years were for free. I started coaching 7 years ago, fitness coaching and mindset coaching, and a little bit of life coaching, peak performance coaching, and then business consulting. And now I'm a business coach with 26 individuals from all over the world that I currently coach on my roster right now, but it's been hundreds over the years. And you just realize over time there's certain common patterns. Many of them are podcasters, by the way. And there's just certain fundamentals that apply to all of us, but the way you apply those fundamentals needs to be unique to each of us.
Wow. And okay, tell me about the dynamic between the two of you on the show. I love co-hosted episodes because it's not one single voice. It's kind of why I do this on this show, is I want other people to hear other voices besides mine. I get bored hearing my own voice after a while. I love hearing other insights, other, perspectives, and having that other person together, I think it adds a different level to a podcast conversation. The two of you, I can tell, know each other so well that you guys are going back and forth with each other. I love in this latest episode how you want to come on together as guests, because you missed doing that when you did that. And there's a debate about who did it first and when did we do our first one. Were you a little bit tipsy the morning that we did that episode? I remember all that.
He was hungover on that, one.
I'm with you on
Nice.
this one. Okay, I'm Team Alan on this one. Sorry, Kevin. But I love the fact that you have this banter back and forth. It's fun as a listener.
Nice.
A key thing I want to know from you, how do you include the listener when it's the two of you recording and you have this familiarity with each other, you know each other really well? How do you bring the listener into that conversation so they feel like they're a part of the conversation, not kind of lost in the mix where two best friends are talking on a show? What do you do to actually think about bringing that listener into the conversation?
It's so interesting that you say that. We have this sort of triangulation going on. It's Kevin, myself, and the listener. And we don't want any one of us to feel like the third wheel sort of thing. It's this is actually really cool. This is the first time I've ever really articulated this to anyone in a public medium, but Kevin and I never wanted it to be sort of a self-righteous soapbox of talking down to people.
Yeah.
Although I do think on some level, sometimes we provide guidance and some of the podcasters that we do coach, we are ahead of, but we wanted it to feel like you're on a train with us and we're chasing our dreams together. We wanted it to feel like a journey. And I think a good metaphor would be the Hobbit films or the Hobbit book, which is you're on a journey together and you're all going through it and growing through it, and you're all unique and you all have your own strengths and weaknesses, and we all are just trying to figure it out. And so Kevin and I are trying to really walk that line of, yes, we are the quote unquote expert in some cases. For me, STEMBIF, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance, I do tend to be more aware in those things. However, and then Kevin has he's always been more right about people. I've always been more right about business. So that's been fascinating over the years, because in the beginning he assumed I knew everything, and I assumed that he didn't, understand a lot about business, which I was right about. But it turns out I knew less internal stuff. I didn't understand a lot of, but he didn't know economics, all that kind of stuff. So to bring this full circle though, it's me, him, and the listener. And it's never just me and him, and it's never just me and the listener. And if it is, it's for a short blurb. So you'll hear Kevin and I go off on something that's completely irrelevant, that's funny, and he and I have kind of rebranded in our own consciousness. We're not branding this externally. I've actually never even shared this before. But the feel of the show is supposed to feel like The Genius and the Joker. Not the Joker in the sense of Batman or any of that. I mean, he's really funny. He is the most extraordinary, ordinary guy. And I'm this sort of weird, esoteric, semi-gifted, tough childhood, seemingly silver spooner who understands a lot. And so I never used to identify publicly as the genius thing, because that really is something that you ever want to come off as arrogant, call yourself a genius, right? So, but I've really needed to lean into who I am, and I started reading a book a while back. This is several years back now, 3 years ago. It's called The Hidden Habits of Genius, and it's a Yale professor who wrote this book, and he taught a course at, I think Harvard, at Yale, for 30 years, and he studied geniuses of history, and he came up with the 14 character traits that all geniuses have and all this stuff. And after reading that book, it was such a identity crisis for me, because deep down, I always kind of knew, because I never was normal. There's nothing about my life and there's nothing about me that's even remotely normal. And ironically, I spent my whole life trying to figure out human beings, trying to figure out myself, trying to study what's going on. And I have this sort of pyramid of the universe of like mathematics and physics and chemistry and biology and physiology and psychology and neuroscience. And I really have spent my entire life, even as a kid, studying how all this stuff works. And so with Kev, we're kind of the genius and the Joker, but he's actually quite brilliant. He transcodes the esoteric crap that doesn't make any sense to anyone for me. Right. And so he's kind of translating my ridiculousness for the listener. So he's on the listener's team, but I also am too. However, I still get to be me. So it's a cool dynamic, I think. And I think the best metaphor that might land for people is if they've ever seen Good Will Hunting, the film. I've always really resonated with that character a lot, because I have, these multimillionaire CEOs and one billionaire who are mentors to me, and they've been trying to get me to be to be different and achieve, and they want to help me. And I actually, some of them, Kevin jokes, he said, you have people reaching out to you to get your time that people would do anything to be in their corner. And I said, yeah, that's kind of been my whole life, honestly. And the truth of the matter is there's not a lot I can learn from them anymore, because they don't understand our mission and what we're trying to do in the world. And so I've always been sort of caught between fighting for the little guy, but also am the little guy in terms of my circumstance. Dad died at 2, stepdad left at 14, lost 3 families kind of by the time I was 4. My real last name isn't even Lazaros, it's actually McCorkle. So like the adversity of my childhood is very, very, underdog. However, my natural gifts definitely aren't. And so I've had to sort of this weird life and this weird dynamic with Kev, where we both grew up in the same small town with the same small-minded town, and both with tremendous humble beginnings, but different gifts. And I've always sort of had a heart for the underdog, because I think in many ways I felt like one. Yeah. While I also know that I'm also not. Yeah.
So the one part I get a lot of questions about from podcasters is all this thing around imposter syndrome, and like, who am I to go on the mic, go on camera, share my thoughts, my opinions, my view of the world? Like, who really cares what I would have to say? And in that, there's a wrestling with ego, where you're like, I don't want to come across as the know-it-all in the room, because that can be kind of off-putting for some people, and they're like, I don't even know you, and here you are telling me how to live my life. Like how do I wrestle with my ego? I think we need a healthy sense of ego because again, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of bravery to actually come to the microphone and create something and put it out into the world for everyone to debate and review and criticize and praise. Like we're putting ourselves out there in a way a lot of our family members, coworkers don't do. They don't have a podcast. So we're operating on a different level just by having a show. But I just that wrestling with a healthy sense of ego, where is that kind of meter where it's like this is healthy and this is dangerous as a podcaster, as a content creator? Where for you is that kind of that range? So like, how do we live a healthy ego in podcasting?
You know, it's so fascinating too. You say that because when I listen to old content, Kevin would attest to this as well. We have listeners every now and then that are really big fans, and I'm so grateful. And they go back to the old episodes. And we always say, too, especially for our podcast listeners, don't compare to us at 1850.
Yeah.
You got to compare. Like, if you're at episode 20, go listen to our episode 20. I promise you it was hot garbage. And at the end of the day, it's hot garbage in comparison. But it's not hot garbage because at episode 20, for episode 20, apples to apples, it was actually really good. However, when we go back and listen, it's cringeworthy for me because I can see, I can hear in my voice, I can hear how underdeveloped we are. And it's this weird thing in life where we're all on this growth journey where I'm a computer engineer, so I always think in these terms. So in November 17th, I'm going to be Allen version 3.6. And when I was in high school, I was a senior, Kevin was as well, same high school. The very first iPhone came out in 2007. And I always say this is the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I think the 15's out now. But that revolutionary breakthrough, I remember when the iPhone came out, it was a revolutionary breakthrough product. However, compared to this iPhone 14 Pro Max, it's not even, it's terrible in comparison.
Yeah.
And so here's the problem. These are products. These are products, so it's easy to get your ego out of the equation. It's different when it's you. Mm-hmm. So me at 2.6 versus me at 3.6, it's not even remotely close. And I think me at 2.6 was less comfortable with who I am. And so there's two types of courage. So every podcaster out there listening, you have tremendous courage for even starting a podcast. And I want to make that clear. If you look at the percentages of people that are willing to put themselves out there, most people can't even give a speech, never mind give a speech that anyone can watch on planet Earth.
Right.
There's 8 billion people now, not 7, 8, and 5.11 are online. I think it's way more than that now because last time I looked it up was a few months ago, and I know Starlink has really bumped those numbers up. So at the end of the day, the whole planet will eventually be online. Eventually, okay? You know, some people will choose not to be. But there's 5.11 billion human beings that could, if they wanted to, listen to me once this is published. Right. That, you want to talk about vulnerability. You say something off or out of context and they snip it and clip it, and all of a sudden they hear you saying something about even what I shared about my stepdad leaving or all of that took tremendous courage. So to get the ego thing down, I have these 3 circles of the ego. I wrote a blog on my LinkedIn about this that you can read. But the outer layer, we all have these things. The outer layer is who you want others to believe you are.
Okay.
The next layer in is who you want to believe you are. Mm-hmm. And then the inner layer is who you really are. And when I got in my car accident at 26, it really collapsed my ego. And it gave me all the humble pie, and it was the sort of metaphorical phoenix burned down, rise anew from the ashes, in the sense that who I wanted others to believe I was, who I wanted to believe I was, and who I really am all came crashing down. Because when you face mortality, you're pretty much stripped naked, metaphorically.
Yeah.
And my goal in life is to keep those 3 circles the same. I don't want to be different on this show than I am behind the scenes. Now, of course, the context of the room is a little different. If you get me in the gym, I'm going to be a little different than I am here because I'm bringing out some of my ego to hit the weights. So this is the sort of 4 archetypes. I'll go briefly with this, but there's the victim, the villain, the hero, and the guide. And the irony of this is we all have this inside of us. And so every film, every piece of literature has these 4 sort of archetype characters. And we just did a Relationship Talks event last night about this. My girlfriend and I, we have a Conscious Couples podcast where we coach couples, and we actually have been coaching couples for 4 years now on how to flourish in your intimate relationship. But ultimately, we do Relationship Talks events every month, and we use the movie Titanic. So in the movie Titanic, I'll go brief with this. The reason I use it is because it's not only, I think, a magnificent film, but most people have seen it. It's one of the most famous movies in all of history. So Rose's character is the victim. She's being suppressed. She's being suppressed by society because women in the early 1900s were treated horribly. And then she's being suppressed by her mom, who is guilt-tripping her because her dad basically had bad debts and they're poor. Her fiance, Cal, is suppressing her because he considers her property and ownership and that kind of thing. And he's sort of a trust fund baby, arrogant, entitled villain. And then you've got the guide, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's character. So Jack in the film, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, is the guide. He's free from, he's freed himself. He doesn't have a lot of money like Cal, but he's free. And so he provides this sort of free space for her to go express herself. So to answer the ego question, the opposite of ego is full expression of true self. And that can take a lifetime to do. I started doing therapy in my 30s. I have a therapist named Carol. She does internal family systems. You can look this up. It talks about the parts of our nature and how true self is sort of like the sun, and the rest of your parts are sort of like the solar system. And what she means by that is we all have a victim, villain, hero, and guide inside of us. Usually the victim is sort of little Alan, who was abused or whatever. The villain is what I call Achilles, which is just the grit that I had to develop to get to where I am and to really survive as a kid. I can now use in the gym if I need it. And that's the ego. I can dial that up. I mean, no one will outwork me. No one. You can see it in me. It's I can play with my ego, but my ego isn't running me, that kind of thing. But true self is where we all want to be. And so everyone out there watching or listening, to get rid of the esoteric nonsense of all this, to make this practical. When you're on the microphone, you know you're a little different. Everyone is. So I'm not saying to shame yourself for that. What I'm saying is, as you develop more and more and more and mature, and you learn and you grow and you become more confident, not only externally, but also confident with who you are, which takes tremendous courage and vulnerability, you will notice less of a delta between who you are when no one's watching and who you are in these microphones. As I've aged and as I've matured, the delta between who I am when I'm on stage, when I'm on a microphone, when I'm on this podcast, versus who I am behind the scenes has gotten smaller. It's less of a show and it's less of a performance and it's more of who I actually am. But that's not a process you can just jump to. It's taken 1,850 episodes to even get to a place where I feel more and more and more authentic on these microphones because I'm more and more and more comfortable being my true self. And I used to be too scared to be my true self, because when you are your true self and then you get criticized and then you get villainized and then you get lashed out at, now they're really hitting the core of who you are. And that can be really, really scary. And so ultimately, I think a lot of us put on these personas and we contort ourselves to be what other people, want us to be, or wherever we're going to gain belonging or acceptance. And the irony and the paradox is that the only way to really gain acceptance is to accept who you really are. And that's a lifelong process that has to be redone over and over and over again. And I think it's a sort of unlayering.
Yeah. Now, I'm a huge introvert. I go to events with my wife, who's an extrovert. She lights up in this environment because she's with her people and people feed her and the energy's attractive to her. For me, I'm there 3 minutes. I'm ready to go home. I'm in the corner checking my watch, getting the car ready. She's like, we're staying. I'm like, oh, I hate this. Anyway, so I have to really kind of turn myself up a little bit in those environments. Yes. To be more interactive. I have to self-talk myself into saying, Dave, these people are friendly. They're not here to hurt you. Go talk. Be friendly. So I have to turn that piece of me up. So that helps me to be a better person because I'm aware of the things that keep me back. In podcasting, I have to turn up my Dave meter just a little bit when I come to podcast, because if I just go with my default setting, I'm gonna have a really boring podcast because I'm really kind of quiet
Yeah.
and normal. So I have to go just a little bit more. I kind of picture it as being chased by a dog through backyards, and there's lots of fences. If I'm being chased by a large, big, angry dog and I have a backpack on my back, when I get to that first fence, I have a choice. I can climb the fence with the backpack on my back, or I can stop, throw the backpack over the fence, and now I'm free to climb the fence faster because I don't have that extra weight that I have to carry over the fence. So for me, every time I get to a point in my life where I have to do something unique or hard or difficult, I take the thing I want to be and I throw it ahead of myself. So I'm tripping over my success ahead of me. I throw it over the fence, and now I'm free to get over that obstacle. So that's kind of how I approach life. I'm always putting what I want to be ahead of me. And that's my goal to work towards. So if you ever get chased by a big angry dog, throw the backpack first, and then you can get over the fence faster. That's kind of how I approach this introverted sense of myself. I always want to be better than that. So I turn it up just a little bit, not crazy, not used car salesman Dave, but just a little bit more than what I would be in public, right? That's how I deal with it.
So it's so interesting that you say that, because I actually have to dial down typically.
There you go. See,
And but this is the thing, is in that energy of dialing up, are you dialing up a true version, or are you dialing up a sort of facade version? And I think obviously I can tell in your energy, you're dialing up a true version,
Yeah.
but you can tell when someone's not, out of insecurity.
Right.
And I think that that's where everyone starts. For the podcasters out there, you're always going to start with that. I think that when we're young, we have these protectors that sort of keep us safe from criticism because we care so much what people think, and we just don't have the tools to cope yet. And so when I hear old episodes, it's hard for me to see how much I dialed down or dialed up or whatever, because I know that was a less authentic version of me. And I think that becoming the true authentic version of you is a process that needs to be worked on. And I have this Venn diagram that I think is really valuable, where you have who you want to be, you have who you need to be to achieve your goals, and then you have who you really are. Mm-hmm. And the epicenter of those three, because here's the thing too, I'm in a crunch time right now. I mean, I told you earlier I had to cancel a meeting. I've got 13 minutes, 15 minutes technically, till my next meeting. And there's an intensity to me lately that might seem like too much or might seem like ego. And that's one thing that's been really fascinating too. I'm actually, a lot of times when I'm dialing down, people actually think I'm dialing up. This is actually me less intense than usual.
well,
But the goal is to be centered, whatever your center point is. And so at the end of the day, who you want to be might be a podcaster. Who you need to be might be someone who's a little less introverted, and who you really are is someone who actually is introverted. And how do you grow into the version that's at the epicenter of those three? And that's what I'm always trying to do. So I think of like a target at the center of those three circles, and I'm always trying to get back to the center.
yeah.
Because who I need to be lately as CEO is very intense. Because 2024 has not been an easy year, and we have a 19-person team, and we're doing well, but it's a grind. And so me during a grind season where I have to get up and get after it and I have to soldier up is a different level of intensity that might be a little inauthentic or come off as a little inauthentic to people. And so you really got to figure out where that center point is for you, and then keep honing in on it. And you realize you're never really at center, but you're closer and closer and closer over the years. You get closer and closer and closer to your true self energy.
Mm-hmm. As you look down the road, 1,857 episodes as of what I listened to today, what is the long-term goal for your podcast with you and Kevin together? Like, I'm sure the two of you are the type of people that map things out and have a plan. I don't think you kind of just pants this. You're doing something on purpose here. So what is kind of your long-term goals for the show? How far out are you thinking?
Yeah, well, so and again, I think this takes tremendous courage, because I think the old me never would have shared this. I have it on my desktop background: to build the most positively impactful, holistic self-improvement company in history. That's the mission statement. Mm-hmm. And the way that we're doing that, and again, I used to be too much of a coward to share this, but we never really planned on stopping. We didn't start this to stop it. A lot of people go into business to sell their business. That's not what we're doing. And ultimately what it comes down to is a place, Next Level University, a place where people can come to reach their potential and grow yourself, grow your podcast, grow your business is where I'm really, think of it like a triangle. So the top is Next Level University. That's the 1,857 episodes that you referred to. Kevin has a podcast called Podcast Growth University.
Amazing. Yeah.
About how to start, grow, scale, and monetize your podcast.
Yep.
And that's for podcasters. So, and then I'm creating a podcast called Business Growth University. A lot of business owners want to start a podcast to build their brand and their marketing and that kind of thing. And then a lot of podcasters want to build a business underneath it so they can sustain it. And so we call them listeners, longers, and business owners. So listeners are people who want to learn from us at Next Level University. Those are people early in their journey. It's all for dream chasers. So early in your dream chasing, maybe you just learn from us. Grow yourself is Next Level University. And then the second one is Podcast Growth University. So listeners, longers. So listeners are people who want to learn from us. Longers are people who want to start their own podcasts and build their own communities. And then business owners are people who have skin in the game, who really need to generate revenue. And so I work with the business owners. He works with the podcasters. We have several people we both work with. So there's actually a few people where we're both in their corner, which is just talk about a two-packed punch there. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the goal is you have a dream. You want to have an impact. And you need to grow yourself. You need to grow your podcast. And you need to grow your business in order to amplify that dream. And that's really the truth of the matter, too, is I remember someone said the point of business is making money. And I remember I walked out of that seminar thinking this was terrible because that's not the point. Making money is necessary. Mm. It is. It's necessary. Trust me. Next Level University would not exist if we didn't make money because we would have gone out of business.
Right.
So it's necessary, but that's not the point. The point of it, the purpose of it, right, is to help people improve themselves and to help them achieve their dreams. That's the purpose. We have to make money. We call it passion, purpose, and profit. So passion is what are you obsessed with? Purpose is who do you want to help with your obsession? For us, it's self-improvement. And then profit is how do you actually make money doing that? And a good example of that is people don't pay me for self-improvement, but they do pay me for business.
Right.
And most business owners, if they don't grow themselves, they can't grow their business. So I grow them. Self-improvement's what they need, but business coaching is what they'll pay for. And so all of us kind of have to figure out those sort of three for ourselves, particularly if you're a podcaster. And if anyone wants help, I love this work. So I'm happy to help.
Excellent. Alan, as we kind of wrap up here, again, I still feel like I'm in Kevin's seat. Like he's going to come anywhere from behind me and tackle me at any point. And he's a big guy, so I'm nervous. I'm looking around over my shoulder the whole time. But as we close off, Alan, I would love for you to take the podcast. I'm going to go sit in the passenger seat and enjoy this. But can you wrap us up here and help us with a podcaster that's listening? They're either going to start a show coming up soon, or they have a show and they're looking to continue podcasting, and they're looking for someone in their corner who can build them up and strengthen them and encourage them on this journey of podcasting. I want to throw it to you. I would love for you to kind of close us off. I know you got to run to your next thing, but before we let you go, can you just kind of wrap this up in a nice little bow? You've done amazing so far, but I just want to hand the podcast to you. I'm going to go join the audience. Can you wrap us up?
Absolutely. That's interesting. I've never had that happen before. Very, very unique. Okay, so fellow podcaster, I'm talking directly to you. A couple things. The genius of the and is something that everyone needs. Podcasting is going to be a deeply meaningful journey, and it's going to be ridiculously difficult. Podcasting is something that we love to do, and if you didn't love to do it, you probably wouldn't do it. And it's also going to be treacherous and terrible at times. I love the work that I do, and I don't want to show up every day. So the genius of the and, it's called duality. If you can't hold two seemingly opposing ideas in your consciousness simultaneously, you are in trouble. I had a ton of self-belief, and I was very optimistic. And Kevin didn't have a lot of self-belief and was very pessimistic. So he was the yin to my yang. But you need self-belief and humility. Meaning, in the long term, you need to believe it's going to work. You need to believe that. You need to believe it's going to work, and you need to believe it'll be worth it. And you better show up every day and pretend you're losing, because if you don't, someone's going to outwork you and they're going to win. And believe it or not, you are collaborating like we're doing right now, but you're also competing. There's a lot of other podcasts out there, so you have to have something unique. If you're talking to everyone, you're not talking to anybody. Bring the listeners with you on a journey. And at the end of the day, the consistency is the most important thing. Game of Thrones is one of the most successful shows in history, and I don't even necessarily like the show, to be completely honest with you, but I do know this. There's no way it would have been successful if they couldn't be consistent. Right? You watch your favorite show every Thursday or every Tuesday. It needs to be a consistent run rate. And the plane metaphor is really important here. If there's only a 20-foot runway, the plane can't take off. You need a long runway, and it needs to be a consistent runway. And work ethic, humility, self-belief. The last thing I'll end you with is this. All my clients, 26 individuals, all different backgrounds, all different countries, all different cultures, all different industries, all different companies, all different types of podcasters. Not all of them are podcasters, but many of them are. I'll tell you what is common for all of them. The doom loop and the success loop. Okay, the doom loop is I don't believe in something, therefore I don't invest more time and effort and money into it, therefore I don't get results, which then makes me believe in it even less. That's the doom loop, and that is how we get stuck. The success loop is I do believe in something, I do believe it'll be worth it, and so I invest time, effort, and money into it. And even though I don't always get the results I want, I do get some results. And as long as those results reinforce your belief, you're in the massive action loop. You're in the success loop. The success loop is I believe in it, I invest in it, I get results. I believe in it, I invest in it, I get results. I believe in it, I invest in it, I get results. Here's the problem. When you don't get results, which will happen whether you like it or not, do you still believe in it?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, this has been a hard journey. So that's what I'll end with is stay out of the doom loop. And every time you find yourself stuck in the doom loop, lacking self-belief, lacking conviction, lacking commitment, you got to get back in the success loop and just get back into action and just take that next simple step and just get back into momentum. Momentum is the most important thing in the world. Kevin and I have made more mistakes than I can possibly express, but I'll tell you what, we've never lost momentum. And there have been a lot of failures, a lot of tough days, but we never lost momentum. And we always stayed in the success loop. And if we got caught in the doom loop, it wasn't for very long.
Excellent. Alan, I love it. I know you got to run to your next thing. And the fact that you had time to do this with me is a great thing. Everyone listening, all the information for Alan and Kevin's podcast in the show notes. Please go and listen. You've got a lot of episodes to listen to. But definitely two people in this world who show up for you as a listener, as a community member. And this is two people that if you have not met them yet, you have to. Like, this is like your mandatory this week to-do list. You have to go meet these two people because they are just two of the best people you're going to meet in podcasting. I'm a huge fan as a listener of the show. And I just want to say thank you to you, Alan, and to Pickles for a great podcast. Kevin will know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's just so great to have the two of you in our world. So thank you so much for all that you do for us. I don't know, we don't always hear back from our audience. A very small percentage actually reaches out, but...
Did he teach you about when you say a filler word to say pickles?
Yes.
That's awesome.
That's
nice.
him. That's
okay,
him.
that's what that is. One of our team members is doing that now too. He's got like, everyone saying pickles, man.
I'm like, what the heck is this all about?
Yeah.
But for the two of you, Ellen, and for Kevin as well, as you're listening, Kevin, thank you to the both of you for what you do and how you show up in this world. It means a lot. As a listener of your show, I just want to say thank you. So thanks for making time to do this.
Thank you for having me. I started with gratitude. I want to end with gratitude. Thank you for having me. The kind words are tremendous and honestly very needed today because today was a tough morning for me, but we're getting up, we're getting after it, and we're staying out of the doom loop. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Everyone, all information is always in the show notes. Go check out the show. Send them a message. Great people in this life. You need to meet them. Thanks again, Ellen.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast all the way through to the end. I love having these great guest co-hosts on the show to share their podcast with you. You have some homework to do. And what I'm asking of you is to go check out our featured guest co-host today. Go over and listen to their podcast. The links are always in the show notes. And I'd love for you to go and give them your love and support. And I think if we can all do that for each other, podcasting will be a lot more fun for all of us. So it's time to do what you've asked others to do for you. It's time to do for this guest co-host. Links in the show notes. Go over and check out their show and leave them a review, do the follow, go listen to their episodes in full, the entirety of an episode, which again shows to the apps that it's a good podcast because you're going there and you're staying to the end. It's probably one of the best ways you can help a podcaster grow their audience and be shown to more people is by simply going and listening wherever you listen to the very end, like you're doing right now here. This is the perfect way to signal to wherever you're listening on, this is a podcast worth promoting. And all of the apps want you to stay on as long as possible. So go over and listen to our guest co-host episode and leave them some feedback. If they have a buy me a coffee, send them a coffee. If they have a speak pipe, send them a voice message. If they have an email, send them an email. If they're on Instagram, send them a direct message. Do something to support our guest co-hosts. They've given up their time to be here with you, to be here with me, and we can give that back to them with time and attention, our love, our support. Thank you for doing all that for me as well. Here on the How to Podcast series, we'll talk to you soon for our next episode.